cause birth rates to plummet. And it's somewhat counterintuitive.
Now, look, when it comes to Elon Musk, he puts his money where his mouth is. The guy has a lot of kids. There were actually people joking online over the idea of giving $5,000 per family to have kids. That this is obviously just another plan to enrich Elon Musk, right? But, jokes aside, actually what we are seeing right now, this whole narrative, it's a big shift from what we've been told over the years. Remember, a key part of the climate change narrative has been that overpopulation is creating a crisis for civilization. The prevailing narrative was that for humankind to survive, we all have to have fewer kids. People were even talking about, quote unquote, reducing the human population. Elon Musk has been a big advocate on the other side of it, saying, no, we don't need to reduce the human population. We need to increase it. And he puts his money where his mouth is, right? But also, look, there were a lot of global programs for this, population control, programs in developing countries. There were, in fact, efforts to reduce the human population. What is really fundamental now, what's interesting, is that the movement is going the opposite way globally. There's now a global move pushing for more kids. Have more children. And also, folks, in other news, a campaign within the U.S. government is aiming to, quote, eradicate anti-Christian bias. This also represents a return to the family, good old family structures. A task force on this, going against the anti-Christian bias in the government, it was established by Trump under an executive order back in February. That said, it is the policy of the United States and the purpose of this order to protect the religious freedoms of Americans and end the anti-Christian weaponization of government. And now look, the campaign to carry this out, this has now been started. It was officially announced by Attorney General Pam Bondi. They held their very first meeting of this task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias. Watch this.
And it's at President Trump's directive, we ended those abuses at the Department of Justice on day one. We dropped 3 ongoing cases against pro-lifers and redefined the FACE Act to ensure that abuse would not continue and that American tax dollars were not used to support the weaponization of our legal system to target Christians. Just a few weeks ago, we convicted a man in Arizona for a plot to bomb Christian churches. The Department of Justice will protect religious liberty for Christians and for all Americans. We'll work closely with everyone around this table and take a whole of government approach to solving this problem and ultimately protect Americans' First Amendment rights. The First Amendment isn't just a line in the Constitution, it's the cornerstone of our American liberty. It guarantees every citizen the right to speak freely, worship freely, and live according to their conscience without government interference.
Now, among the cases she noted were there's a lot of them, there were the alleged violations of the FACE Act. That was, pro-life demonstrators. They were accused of violating the Freedom of Access to Clinics Entrances Act by protesting in front of abortion clinics. Basically, if you block people from getting medical care, you can be criminally charged. Now, that was not included with people who maybe blocked ambulances or whatever else, blocking freeways. But protesters standing in front of abortion clinics, they were charged with this. You had several dozen of them, in fact. Christians were being arrested under the previous administration. They were being sentenced to prison, long terms in prison, because of this. Now, the Trump administration pardoned them, but for a lot of people, this did represent really an attack on religion. And, one of the key arguments with that is the charges were done out of bias, because we saw 2 different standards. On one side, pro-life protesters were being arrested, charged, sent to prison for blocking the entrances of abortion clinics without violence. But on the other side, there were pro-abortion activists, and not only were they doing stuff like that, they were firebombing pro-life clinics. They were defacing them. They were doing all kinds of stuff. Almost nothing was done about that. So why is it on one side you can stand in front of a door and go to prison? On the other side, you can firebomb a building and not go to prison? You tell me, or face a very little slap on the wrist. Now, as Pam Bondi noted, there have also been many instances of churches getting vandalized. And look, generally, it seems the cases are not treated as hate crimes like they would often be if, another group is targeted. If you saw somebody, throw bacon at a mosque, if you saw somebody deface a synagogue, you would probably see hate crime charges. You'd probably see something about it. If somebody burns a church or, defaces a church, is that then a hate crime? For the most part, it has not been treated that way. There are two standards when it comes to this, and that's one of the arguments here. And this has also led to a lot of arguments, again, of the two standards of justice. Why is there a double standard? Why is it okay to attack one group but not another? Well, law doesn't normally work that way. And this is one of the main arguments being brought forward, that there is an anti-Christian bias within the system. And of course, that's the context of what's happening right now. When Donald Trump formed the task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias, it was in light of all these issues and a whole lot more, actually. And also, look, this came about from his executive order in early February. Here's what that does. This is the White House. It says the task force, officially known as the Task Force to Eradicate Anti-Christian Bias, will be comprised of members of President Trump's cabinet and key government agencies. The task force will review the activities of all departments and agencies to identify and eliminate anti-Christian policies, practices, or conduct. Now, briefly on this is where it gets interesting. A lot of activities within culture do involve religious issues. If you touch on something that impacts a person's fundamental values, right, which does include family values, which does include gender and sexuality and things like that, you impact the realm of religion. And so when the Biden administration was rolling out policies, for transsexualism and things like this, that also involved a religious element. A lot of opposition to that was religious. People say this goes against my religious beliefs. It's not just Christians either. Muslims, for example, would be generally, traditionally very opposed to those things as well, because it is a religious issue. Many people who oppose these things oppose them on the grounds of religious belief, because, of course, religion has standards on family values, sexuality, and so on. And so if you want to force people to adopt new moral standards, by virtue of that, it will necessitate undermining religion. And so when you implement those types of policies that impact family and gender issues and sexuality, automatically you are going to put in place something that challenges people's religious beliefs. And institutionalizing those policies within the government did have the effect of challenging people's religious beliefs. Many people felt they were discriminated because of that. And so as they go against these policies, practices, conduct, and other things that they say undermine that, it goes into the realm of culture. And this could have the effect to an extent of separating, government from culture. Government should, at least according to the Constitution, protect religious belief, protect freedom of speech, but not dictate it. And that is the boundary that many people believe has now been crossed. Now, in terms of where things are at right now, it does seem the tables are turning, let's say. But importantly, Pam Bondi, she noted the new campaign, it's not about favoritism to one particular religion. This is publicly being called a movement against anti-Christian bias. The argument here is that they were just kind of targeted more in the previous administration. And she noted this is about protecting the First Amendment rights of all Americans. In the review of this, it could touch on a lot of things, right? Whatever people's beliefs are. And when it comes to Christianity, the fact is there are a lot of denominations. There are a lot of them. And sometimes they have very different beliefs. And people are, again, they have rights to those beliefs. If you address things that undermine people's rights to their own beliefs, then that does represent an attack on religion. And if you remedy all of those and find a way to make government so it protects religion rather than tries to dictate it, this could have the effect of really having a ripple effect through freedom of belief for everybody. Now, also, there appears to be a new campaign to bring religion back to America as well, just, overall. And this was also part of Trump's speech at the White House on Easter Sunday. Watch this.
We're bringing religion back in America. We're bringing a lot of things back, but religion is coming back to America. That's why you see the kind of numbers that you're seeing, the spirit and the kind of numbers that you're seeing.
But look, folks, on to a different topic. HHS Secretary, Health and Human Services, RFK Jr. He's now doing what he said he was going to